Hi, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Planet, a 2 to 4 player competitive tile placement game where you're going to be placing tiles not this time on a board but on your own modular magnetised planet shaped object. So here we are, we're playing God and you're going to mould that planet in your image. Or more actually, we're going to be just trying to build the most habitable planet for our furry little friends. And as an added little bonus, we get to play a board game at the same time. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is to be the player with the most points at the end of 12 rounds of play. So what you see here is an abridged version of the setup because each of these piles of tiles represents one turn of play. So there are actually going to be 12 of these columns. And what you're going to be doing is fighting over these objectives because these objectives are the primary means for you to get points throughout the game. But these first two turns here, you're just going to be picking and placing a tile on your magnetised planet here in a place where you see fit. But you can generally forward plan and see what objectives you've got to battle over in the coming turns. So as the game progresses, there'll be more and more objectives that you'll be fighting over. You'll also be given natural habitat objectives, and that means that you'll be looking to place a certain type of habitat in your planet because the more you do that, the more points you'll get at the end of the game. So each turn you're going to take the pile of 5 tiles from the current round and place them face up. And then starting with the first player, each player is going to pick one of those tiles and place them on an empty space on their planet. So we need to know what the objectives of the game are before we can decide which tiles we want. And we also need to understand how a tile and ultimately how a planet is broken down. So each tile has 5 areas on it. And let's just take this one for example here. That's got 2 sea areas, 1 desert area and 1, let's say, mountainous area. And then we can look at the objective cards that we've got to fight over. And I'll go through the 3 main types that you're looking to achieve. So first here we've got this green background card, and that shows you here that to win this objective you need to have a region. So regions are basically areas that have the largest size. So here we have a size 3 desert, but then if we start placing further desert tiles adjacent to that, so let's just place this one here, and then just for example say on the next turn we were able to place that tile, we've now got made a 3 area desert region into a size 4 area desert region. So going back to the objective card, this is saying you want the largest forest region that's not adjacent to a mountainous region. So there's a converse objective next to it here in that you want the largest sea region that is adjacent to a mountainous region. So there are different types here that like to have a natural resource of a certain type next to it and others that don't. And then the final type of objective are these here that want you to have multiple regions that aren't adjacent to each other on the planet because the player with the most separate regions of that type are going to gain that objective. So every turn after that second turn and starting with the third, you're going to be fighting over these ever-growing number of objectives, and you're rinsing and repeating that process with the first player going round to the left, so each player gets a chance to be the first player on more than one occasion until you get to the end of that 12th round, and then you simply count up the number of cards you've got. So I referenced this natural habitat objective card at the start, and you're going to get 2 points for every card that's not, or every coloured objective that's not the same colour as your natural habitat, because you're only getting 1 point for every card that does share the colour with your natural habitat, because you're getting bonus points here by counting up the number of areas that you've collected of that type and gaining a number of points according to what's on the card. So that's how this game plays. What did I think of it? So who is this for? Well, it's undoubtedly a lightweight game, and there aren't that many board games out there that give you something tactile, an object for you to manipulate, for you to use, that also gives you a sense of ownership in how you maximise the use of that planet in the tiles that you place. So the uniqueness of it is really going to be a selling point. It's also got animals in it, and who doesn't like animals? I'll tell you, savages, that's who. So you might want to consider this if you liked Reef, published by Next Move Games. Or Number 9, that's got a few letters missing, published by Abacus Spiel. So the former doesn't share that many mechanics with this, but just gives you that same sense, that same vibe, and that's the same story for Number 9 as well. So once you get past what is admittedly an absolutely fantastic design concept, is there enough meat on the bone in terms of providing a satisfying and gratifying gameplay experience? Well, I would say absolutely yes for its intended audience. That being families, and especially families with younger children. Because that planet almost acts like a toy, and that tactile sense of playing a game whilst you're manipulating and moulding the planet really is going to appeal to our younger generation. The fact that it's extremely simple mechanically is only going to help with that and act as a great barrier to entry for those that might be new to board gaming in general. So it's a well-paced game, but I really do think it's playable better at 3 or 4 players, because in a 2-player game, my experience is you're constantly worrying about what your opponent's doing, how big are their regions in terms of trying to achieve objectives, and you get away from a game that should have its own rhythm and flow, where you're just maximising your opportunities and building a planet that will allow you to gain the most points. It's also a good teaching tool for forward planning, because you've got what animals are going to be joining the planet in later turns information readily available to you throughout. So the fact that you've got to decide, do I grab some early points but then it sacrifices me getting points later on, you've got that decision making matrix to consider. And that's actually in a way some advanced concepts into what is a very, very straightforward and very simple game. So from my perspective, I would just have liked to have seen a few more added variants in there, a little bit more in terms of objectives. Perhaps they could have added more objectives to, or even added that as a variant. So certain cards you take out of the deck and wouldn't be seen unless you were playing a more expert variant of the game. Because there's just not quite enough from my perspective in terms of replayability, enough to suggest that there's meaningful strategy here that would make me want to keep coming back to the game. And I'm complaining about that a little bit because it would have been so easy to add in. Yes, if this is just intended for a family game, so be it. This works perfectly for that intended audience. But with those few little bells and whistles on, I think you could have expanded that audience with very little effort indeed. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, well, production quality is of a very high standard. The planet, the magnets and the tiles, I suspect will hold up under scrutiny after multiple playthroughs without any problem at all. And the cartoony style artwork on the box and the more CGI style art on the cards again is top rate. So there's only so much space in this lightweight games rulebook for some fluff and some theme, so you're going to be getting most of that theme visually through playing and manipulating the planet. So with all that being said, Dice vs Cards are going to give you a final score of 8 out of 10. So this is a more objective score than I normally give because I'm not this game's intended audience, but I'm reasonably convinced this is going to be a surefire hit for families out there. I just would have preferred a few more expert variants in there to add with variety and replayability. So that's it from me. I'll see you next time.
Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to 0. He's our powers magnified.